Good morning, folks. This is the Enlil Spiral, named for the Sumerian god of wind and earth and storms. It's a key piece of today's news and contains a key piece of news coming up this week. We'll go over all of this starting at spaceweathernews.com, and we find the last 24 hours on our star with an eruption on the south. The largest active region decided not to wait for much peripheral sunspot development, gave it a run all by himself. It produced a C7 solar flare, minor ionizations of the upper atmosphere, but the big story is the CME that erupted with it, the coronal mass ejection, which you should see rippling through the sun's atmosphere after the eruption. The coronagraphs clearly show a halo eruption. Expansion on all sides here confirms the blast is heading at Earth. And normally, we would look at the C7 flare rating and CME characteristics and guess that it would spark a minor geomagnetic storm when it impacted tomorrow night, KP5. However, the CME is not coming alone. Stripped of CMEs on the Enlil Spiral, we see the magnetic sectors of the solar wind, and the one due up next for Earth is apparently a dense one. The first powerhouse coronal hole stream of the solar cycle. Perfect timing, eh? A 1-2 punch, going from a climb out of sunspot minimum to a coronal hole and CME back to back. If we get that double tap, and the CME is south-pointing magnetic angle, we could see strong storms in the KP7 or 8 range. Even then, this is not an end scenario. Meteorological effects are likely, along with increases in electrical fires and large system glitches like in airline systems, PlayStation Network, communications, or rail networks. Going to be a fun week. We're mostly going to stick with the sun, and sadly it won't get any better by the end, but first bear with the views of the vehicles in space viewing our celestial vizier. Video and description of how satellites work together is linked below. Up next, folks, that situation in Madagascar is getting horrifying. Years with no rain. Children literally dying in droves by the day. Parents becoming numb to the death of their own families. The world already ended here. And I'll tell you what, I really hope these people know what they're doing, or we've got a brand new threat to the world in labs of the US, Europe, and Japan today. Hayabusa touched down on Ryugu and grabbed a sample. It is now returned to Earth. Any of you guys see the movie Life, Ryan Reynolds? Just not loving the idea of potentially alien microbes or even their organic matter on our planet. Now, I told you the story gets worse. It gets worse. Folks, there is a bit more chatter about a raging solar cycle afoot. The community consensus and even my polar field analysis had suggested a relatively weak sunspot cycle upcoming. But it's hard to deny some of the other patterns and that we're off to a huge start in this sunspot cycle. True enough, the rapid spike upwards so far will have its downturn and back up and down again as with every cycle, but the proposition of a powerful cycle is the worst case scenario. If instead of at the green dot, the common forecast, we go closer to the purple dot, the forecast of this study, with Earth's weakening magnetic field, no, global grids cannot handle what we average as our maximum impact each cycle. Last cycle, the maximum was less than half of the average max, and it was merely an anomaly. I'll suggest once more, enjoy electricity while you can. We greatly appreciate your support. Remember, we won't lose the global grids this time, even with the double impact, but it's time to watch how our planetary shield reacts. The CME is on its way. We've got your wind maps and shots of our star to close. Subscribe because we'll do this all again tomorrow. Right here, but right now it's 4:20 a.m. in the new Valley of the Sun. Eyes open. No fear. Be safe, everyone.
2020. Guys, I told you that when we got the new images in from stereo satellite, because it takes them longer to transmit their data. So as we were looking at the solar explosion earlier this afternoon, this particular satellite, which is much older than the one we were looking at, it takes time to get the data sent back about 1 million miles and then processed through the computer. But now we have it. And what you're looking is an airburst. And when you see it explode from the complete circle of the sun, that tells you, just like if you're standing in front of a shotgun blast, you see that? That it is definitely Earth facing. Same satellite, wider view on LASCO C3 camera. You got Venus coming in here to the right. But again, you're going to watch a complete circular blast, which tells you that it's coming toward you like a deer in the headlights. Again, this is the CME. This is the model we were talking about earlier. The Earth is in the yellow dot there. It's not going to be a long video. I just wanted to update that, and that tells you, again, from the images from the stereo satellite, what we're dealing with. And when you look at the actual stereo images here's one of the last still shot coming from the CO2 camera. Notice your timestamp. The Earth is to the right of that. In other words, this is headed towards us. Remember, the size of the sun is the white circle. Look at the size of that blast. Now, it was not a strong solar flare compared to some of the stronger X flares, but the coronal mass ejection, as we look at this, is very powerful. Now, my concern is because of grand solar minimum. I've said it many times. I hate to have to repeat it, is that our shields are weak. Within a day or so, we're going to see the effects. If you look at this, it's 8 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, UTC time for December the 8th. On this chart, the Earth is in the green, the Sun is in the center. And what we just saw is coming from the Stereo A satellite, which is to the left of the Earth. And right there, guys, so it was looking at that angle as the Sun was blasting that coronal mass ejection off towards Earth. And it'll show you where your other planets are. And there's, again, you got Venus and Mercury to the left of the Sun. So, and this is the direction of the coronal mass ejection coming out towards our planet. We're going to have to wait and see. It's been a hell of a year, and different weather effects, and space weather controls every drop of weather on this planet. Okay? So, we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have to watch it. And I've said this before the last few years since we've been in the grand solar minimum and seen different events, that we're dealing with new science, that we did not have the capabilities that we have now, nor do we have the technology to observe it. But guys, I want you to think about this on a spiritual level. Look at what's happening around the world right now. Look at what's happening with the demon forces in the U.S. and around the world. But God has a plan to counter their maneuvers and their weapons. So pay attention to what I'm talking about here, because an angel pours out a vial upon the sun. Also, Malachi, the healing wings of Shemesh, which is not the Son of God, but the Son that we're talking about, pour out that healing. So, as we're seeing the demons rush in to try to take over the planet, because you think about it, Satan knows he has but a short time and he's raging around. God has that timing too. So there's good things about what the sun's doing. There's bad things. It could knock out some power, some things like that. It could cause some earthquakes. But what are in the healing wings? I want you to pay attention to that. I want you to be receptive to it. It's a heads up. Be safe.